Welcome back, everyone, to another episode, the final episode of our Star Trek Strange New Worlds Fake Nerds Watch series. This concludes, as we were talking about before we aired, 48, I believe, consecutive weeks of Star Trek. And it concludes 10-episode run, far too short run of Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
You're always saying like the final episode of our Strange New Worlds discussion. I'm like, there's gonna be a season 2. Like, we already know that.
But I think of them as like series, right? I think of like Fake Nerds Watch as like series. So like every series is a.
What are you in the BBC?
Yes. I don't know why. I think of everything strangely.
Okay.
I'm joined.
It's a whole new world for you then.
A strange new world.
That's what I did.
You set it up.
So I'm joined by Cookie from Just Little Podcast. Returning, you missed the last episode, but you're back. We finally caught you. We finally caught you in between weeks of going out of town, in between going out of town weekends.
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks, which has been good because like I haven't really gone on vacation a lot, and neither has my wife. As a teacher, it's like you don't work normal 40-hour work weeks. You work like 100-hour work weeks. You don't have any days off pretty much. Mm-hmm. So it was nice to get away and just enjoy life for a little.
And Sparkz, Witty, joining me from Fake Nerd Podcast and last week's hectic episode.
Did we drop that last week?
Maybe not. Maybe it was a week.
I think that was 2 weeks ago.
Whatever. It was
whatever the last episode was. That's why I said Cookie was lucky that he was there, because it was a shit show on my end.
Yeah, Cookie, that's what happens when you leave, man.
I'm sorry. I'll try not to do it.
This whole show falls apart.
It was like going to Star Wars and then going on vacation to Tampa and then going to SuperCon. And this weekend, I'm actually going to go on a hot date with my wife. So it's like you got this like small little sliver of window, but it's so nice to like fill that window with like-minded geeks who appreciate wonderful storytelling.
Yeah. All right. So let's start with. I appreciate that. That was really nice. I don't mean to like gloss over that. That was really nice. Thank you. So why don't we start with the first episode then? So we're going to cover 2 episodes, episode 9 and episode 10, and that's going to be it. So let's do episode 9 first. All Those Who Wander. What did we think of this one?
Hey, so like I just learned about the Gorn.
Yeah.
Have they always just been alien?
No.
Okay.
The complete, which is crazy for me because we've talked about it. Brandon and I have talked about it multiple times where if this show shows the Gorn, it's going to mess with continuity. And they did it in such a way that it didn't mess with it because it was.
Here's the thing, though. It does mess with it, and
a little.
To be perfectly honest, the fact that Spock is there is the problem. Because
Spock doesn't see a Gorn.
That's true. But he says that no one has seen a Gorn, and nobody knows what their ships look like, and nobody knows what they look like. And he specifically says that those lines and the thing is like. That's fine. Strange New Worlds came out of the gate and said, like, we're going to stick to canon, but we're not going to be strangled by it. And if the story deems that we're going to have to bend canon a bit, that so be it. And quite frankly, I'm okay with that.
Maybe he just means no one currently on the ship.
Sure.
We didn't see their ship though. All we saw was the baby Gorns.
Yes, that's true. And like I think crucially, Strange New Worlds walked the line of like being like, nobody saw an adult Gorn. In this, they're all adolescent Gorn, and like, even if you wanted to have like someone sees an adult Gorn, like we get the Gorn again next season, and there's an adult there. All right, whatever, it's fine. Because like, again, like if I don't think that Strange New Worlds, I don't think any Star Trek, quite honestly, I don't mind when Discovery does this either, but like. If you need to bend canon for your story, for what you think is going to be a good story, go right ahead. That's the thing about these legacy franchises, these like long running franchises like Star Wars, Star Trek. They have to be bent. The Next Generation bent the canon all the time. That nobody cares because that's considered the gold standard of Star Trek. But nobody talks about the fact that the Next Generation, all the way through Enterprise, really messed with the original series. Like they were constantly changing things from the original series.
I think it's even more prominent whenever you're dealing with prequels, especially prequels to material that exists at least 20 or 30 years back.
Yeah.
That you just kind of be like, I mean, this is like anytime someone's like getting mad about, like actually upset, like they're like, this kind of breaks canon for me, but whatever, on Leia in Obi-Wan.
Oh, sure.
Spoilers for Obi-Wan, Leia's in it. Anyone who gets like really bent out of shape about the canon of that, I'm like, what do you want? Like, they obviously made that movie not thinking about this story, but isn't this story more engaging and developing to have and more fun? Who cares if like the minor details of it don't quite perfectly line up?
Exactly. It's the difference between bending canon and breaking canon, I think. Because I do believe that if you break canon, that
like when you have a plot point about transporting people off one ship while the shields are up, and then later you do it even though that's not supposed to be possible in the science of Star Trek.
Yeah,
canon breaking, cool.
Yeah. Star Trek in the Darkness does that a lot.
I remember.
Yeah. So like if you break canon, even I'll have a problem with that, because I think then you hurt the foundation of what you're building off of. But bending, there's nothing wrong with a little bending. And quite honestly, I think Strange New Worlds walks the line of like, all we're doing is just bending canon a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, this is the first time. Also, the first time we've seen an adolescent Gorn. Have I shown you a picture, Sparkz, of what the Gorn looked like in the original series?
No.
Okay.
I don't want to know. To be honest with you, no, I don't want to know.
Okay, well, so I'll just paint a picture because it's part of the discussion of what I really like about this episode.
Sure.
Because the Gorn in that original series episode, so it's called The Arena.
Mm-hmm.
And we just meet one Gorn captain. And it's basically like this, it's an impressive suit for the time, but it's definitely restrictive. The guy can't see in it. It's lumbering, it's slow, it's heavy, and Kirk has to pretend to fight this thing that he's clearly faster than.
Okay, I already know what we're talking about now because I've seen that fight.
Oh, you've seen that fight? That's a Gorn.
I mean, like through osmosis, like that thing's been around. This is the famous one, right? Where he's fighting the lizard-headed man. All
exactly.
Right.
That's a Gorn.
All right. Okay.
And so like so like the idea of like in this episode, what I've really liked about Strange New Worlds in general is that they've recontextualized the Gorn to be a terrifying threat, because they're meant to be in the original series. They just didn't have the technology to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that we really expanded on that, and I hope that we get a redesign, because quite frankly, like, they need it.
I think though, like Sparkz, you can tell that they got a lot of inspiration from certain other movies that are out
Alien.
there.
This is Alien.
I think inspiration is a generous word.
They completely ripped.
I think the word you're searching for is lifted.
And while I am a big Aliens fan and I appreciate the fact that they did it and it was like a not a subtle nod to them, I think that they could have done something different.
I think I agree with you, because this is the thing. I literally love this episode, except for the fact that the whole time I was like, this is just Alien, though.
Yeah.
This is literally just Alien, though.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like there was a better way.
Yeah,
I just feel like I think you can even do the eggs living inside a host and then bursting out and hatching and still go a different way than the rest of the episode, still playing like an alien film in Star Trek.
Yeah.
And it only got to me only because, like, when it wasn't doing that, everything about like what happens with the characters in this episode, I love. Everything about the context around this is one of my favorite episodes because the entire main cast is in this episode. Even if they're not in it throughout the entire time, they all appear at one point or another.
Yeah.
Because like we don't have Rebecca Romaine the whole time, but we do have her at the beginning and the end. And we Dr. M'Benga the same, but like we get most of the characters throughout the entire run.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I really like that episode right off the bat. Like because we got all the players on the board. But it really just, there was something about like, this maybe sounds a little mean, but like you took the easy way out.
Mm-hmm. So you mean like they like, instead of paying homage, they lift it.
It feels that way. I think like just the eggs and the bursting out, right, and scampering away, that's homage. Okay, I'm with you. It's growing quickly. It's stalking them around the ship.
There's a little girl.
The only reason that it doesn't get jettisoned into space is because they're not currently in space. They're on a planet, so they have to freeze it.
This also has a lot of it's like if the characters from Aliens were in Alien, right? Because like Sam Kirk is the Bill Paxton character.
I had to process the sentence you said for a second, but okay, I'm with you now.
Right, because like Bill Paxton's not in the first film.
Yes,
he's in the second film, and he's like game over, man. That's Sam Kirk. The entire time Sam Kirk is playing Bill Paxton's character.
Right,
and then
this is what I mean. Like, whole cast is here. Sam Kirk's here. Jesus Christ.
I know you get Sam Kirk back for the first time this season. And then you have the little girl, Newt. That's clearly just Newt.
Yeah, 100% Newt.
See, that was another. The little girl angle. That's the other part, I guess. Like the whole little girl thing didn't work for me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Have you guys seen the Strain? No.
The Strain?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw the first 2-3 seasons, and then I dipped out.
In that, it's like kind of like a Nosferatu with meets like a Dracula form, and what happens is when you get infected, there are these like small worms that literally take over your body, and you don't know that they're there, but when you see like a UV light, it hits it, you're seeing them literally covering your body, just swimming around, and it gives you the chills. Right. And there was a moment in here where I don't know the guy, but the blue creature dude, they looked at his neck and they saw the veins and everything. And I was like, this is awesome. If they continued with that and blossomed on that, where you have it like infected his entire body, these worms are taking over and it's literally eating him from the inside out. Boom. You changed everything up.
Yeah. I just feel like there was a more interesting creative way to go about this.
Sure.
And they maybe it was intended as like tribute or homage to Alien, but it's just lifting a little too much.
There was a moment, speaking to your point that you said you got the whole cast in this episode. There was a moment, it was after Lieutenant Expendable dies and Cadet Shia dies.
Dale? Dylan?
I don't remember.
It starts with a D.
I think it's Dale.
Yeah.
But he was in and he was out. It was quick.
I knew that those obviously, like, it's Star Trek tradition. They're introduced at the beginning of the episode. They're expendable.
The moment it's like, also this ceremony is for Dale. Congrats on being dead. I was like, this guy's dead. I don't know what we're doing, but this guy's dead.
And like Cadet Shia, who's been here the whole time, which is fine. Like I'm kind of excited that you were like, oh yeah, Uhura wasn't the only cadet on the Enterprise doing a rotation. Cool. Where the hell has Shia been the whole season though? And so like you introduce these people because you need expendable characters, because there's a moment after those two characters die where I looked at everyone on the screen and I go, everyone here has plot armor except for two of them, La'an and Hemmer. Because otherwise, we know when everyone dies.
Right.
Or at least we know where they end up, because I don't think we've ever seen Mbenga's death.
Perhaps that's part of the reason too, is like, even without me being intimately familiar with Star Trek canon, I'm like, all right, I know most of these folks are going to make it out, but I don't even think it's necessarily, maybe just because they're going too hard on the Alien concept, and like where Alien succeeds as a film is because you don't know who's going to make it out. I think like Cookie brought up a great point. I think that it's just, when you're looking at the like infection on the blue alien, everything was far more like interesting, because the moment they said like infected with Gorn eggs and that kind of thing, I was like, all right, like there's so much more you can do with a concept that if they spit on you, you've got Gorn eggs in you. And I feel like there's a different way to go about giving birth to that than the chest bursting. Maybe even like I said earlier, that if it had just been not chest bursting, but the bursting out of the body, maybe even just if that wasn't part, it wouldn't have felt so heavily handed in the alien territory.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there were 3 in him instead of 1, which is really rolling some new dice here. So,
yeah, it reminded me of the Pred alien from Alien vs Predator Requiem.
Sure, yeah.
If you remember that, it's just going to remind everybody of the most horrifying scene of that movie.
It's like the coolest idea that they could have come up with, wasted an entire film.
That movie is so awful. The movie is awful.
And that should have been like the knockout idea, right?
Yeah,
talk about like two supervillain stars, and it's like, what could be better than combining them and like literally being able to do that and having it make sense within your own canon. Wild that they botched that idea.
Listen to our alien. No, we did that on the Predator, right? We did that on the Predator.
We did both. Discussion. We did yeah, okay. We did the AVP discussion in Predator because Alien has too many movies.
Go check that episode out for that.
I do want to touch on, because I brought up like the little girl stuff doesn't work for me. There is an exception. I really like, because we're just coming out of the episode, I really like Dr. Mbenga being calling her his daughter when he gets upset, and recognizing that and using that to connect to La'an. I think that works. But then outside that, the girl means nothing to me. We literally don't spend time with her. She's a plot device mostly to push La'an out of the show, which I don't get.
Yeah, it's weird that, because La'an's not gone forever. She'll be in the next season,
I would assume. So I don't know why we're doing this. Yeah,
it is a weird thing to do, because, and if we had kept, like, if we had done like time with her and the child, like, but we don't have any scenes where it's just the two of them being relatable.
That's honestly the thing. Like, outside of La'an leaving for the girl at the end of the episode, the girl serves no purpose to the story.
Yeah,
it's nice that there's a moment of Dr. Mbenga, because you're like carrying on. Oh man, that just happened to him. Cool. I'm glad that that's like still on the character's mind. That's nice to know. But then outside of that, like, she doesn't do. We have our whole cast here, at least partially or most of the episode. Having this little girl adds nothing, and there's no time to spend with her. So she's just another distraction. And I do feel like Cookie's right. Just a Newt send up ultimately that kind of goes nowhere.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of, you include Newt without making what made Newt work.
Yeah.
The only thing that I can think of is that this is a reflection of La'an, and it's her realizing what she did as a kid and now trying to jump that hurdle as an adult and move past it, because it's definitely something that she has not moved past, and the death of her brother weighs heavily on her. And it seems like now that she's going to do this journey to kind of reconcile what she did in her past and hopefully kind of like forgive herself.
I hear you, and I definitely see them going for that in the show.
They just didn't.
Yeah, no, they just didn't execute on it. Brandon's right. Like, they needed to put more scenes of her and La'an. Honestly, like, I'm really happy the whole cast was in the show, but you strip down that cast so that La'an spends more time with the girl. That's what you do if you're doing that story, right? But they didn't commit to that idea. So it's just kind of like, you could lose it. Also, I don't like the girl. Here's the problem. I hate that character from the moment that she sees that the blue alien's about to go nuclear and release the Born, and the little girl says nothing.
I watched this.
It just goes and hides, and I'm like, you are essentially responsible for the death of Cadet Cherry.
Yes.
I had that same thought the second time I watched it. The second time I watched it, because I watched it just a little bit ago. I watched both these episodes just a bit ago. She's like, do you have Gorn in you? Like, what? Why didn't you tell it? And like, when she notices, because she notices that the blue alien, like, what's happening, she knows what's happening to this guy. She's aware of it because she goes to hide. She doesn't say anything.
Right.
And like, immediately I was like, there's no reason why you shouldn't have.
and in theory should already know they're infected, and in theory should at least spot the signs sooner. And like, I don't even understand how this girl survived when everyone else didn't.
Mhm.
That feels just kind of like a cop out to have this girl there. But yeah, I like, honestly, it was framed in such a way when she was sneaking away that I'm like, is she bad?
Me too.
Is she like,
I thought the same
is she
thing.
like, does she want the Gorn to infect people? Is it her fault? Because that's how they frame it.
Yeah.
She legitimately like seemed like a bad person to me, and then they're like, no, she was just scared, and I'm like, oh, so she just sucks.
Yeah.
Understood. Yeah,
'Cause
so
you-
it doesn't help.
you
It doesn't
immediately-
help that they made her unlikable.
You immediately don't like this character, and I'm sure that's not the point. Like, the point is that she's supposed to be scared and should kept her tongue. But it's like, excuse me, ma'am. The guy that you're looking at is about to kill you.
In this very wonderful season of television, this was a big whiff on a character beat. Was just the involvement of this girl just didn't work even a little bit.
Yeah, I will say we've been a little negative on the episode. I do think it's a good episode overall.
Me too.
And it definitely sets up for the finale, and it gets you intrigued so much for the finale.
You mean
Literally-
the finale of the season, or of the finale of the episode?
The finale of this season.
Okay, well, we'll get there.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But it just like how the beats happen with this, and like you guys said with this little girl. Granted, I haven't finished it, so don't spoil it for me. I don't know how I haven't been spoiled by it, but Halo with the one chick who's
I
been
stopped watching that.
sitting with the Covenant.
I couldn't spoil it for you if I wanted to.
Okay, so
I
there's a
stopped.
chick
I
who's-
stopped watching.
there's a
I
chick
couldn't
who's
do
with
it
the Covenant,
anymore.
and she's just like she's always with the Covenant, and she's been raised by them, and now she wants them to take over the world. And I immediately thought of this little girl. I'm like, wow, maybe this is a way for the Gorn to infiltrate the Federation and kind of plant their own seed inside there, and this blossoms into something.
Or it's a trap for
Yeah.
Pike.
Yeah. Either even without the Halo reference, like I get you, and that's how it felt like they were framing it, and I think that's the problem. Brandon wanted to switch to positives, but I think it stands out so much because we've been nothing but positive up to this point on the show, and I feel like this is the first time, honestly, genuinely, I feel like this is the first time in the season where I went, boy, that was just bad. That was just not good. That was just not a good choice.
But in reference, when you compare it to Discovery, you're like, oh, this is wonderful. This is great.
I
But you
can't do that. I can't do that. I can't compare it to any other Star Trek show. I just have what's in front of me, Cookie, and this is the one thing where I'm like, well, this was a mistake. Now that being said, Brandon's correct. The whole episode is very good. And the important story, which La'an's is not the important story, which is the problem of including the girl, is Uhura's story.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
this is Uhura staying. And I think that arc works really well.
And it's something that's been teased about through this entire season. We keep getting glimpses of her and her like coming of age and coming into her own.
It goes back to the recap of this episode. Very wisely reminds the audience of the last time Hemmer and Uhura were together, which has her talk about how she doesn't know if she wants to stay in Starfleet. You know, and I mean, we know where she goes. We know that she does stay in Starfleet. But I think what this show has wisely done is not necessarily given us doubt, but showed us why that ended up being important to her, why she came back, why she was like, yeah, once I'm done here, I'm going to go back.
Right.
I think that was a good choice. Now, I do want to say one thing, though. Cookie, I'm still mad at you for bringing up the Halo show.
I'm sorry. I got to finish it, too. That's the sad thing.
It's bad.
I have to finish it for my Patreon. Like, I stopped it. I'm like...
Do your patron as a favor.
If he's getting paid, you get paid, man.
You know what?
Keep doing it.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay. Yes. I think what they've done with Uhura is really great. In this episode specifically.
Yeah, I did not think that they would kill Hemmer.
It was so sad.
Did not see that coming. Very sad. Very sad. Very gut-wrenching. Very like, I like him so much.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Such a
I
bummer.
really
He's
like that
grown
character.
so much.
It made me it made me all the more happy. Like, not that I was disappointed in any way, but like we didn't get to. I definitely didn't gush about it enough, but it made me all the happier in retrospect that the previous episode had so much of him as well.
Mhm.
Because he's gone now. Really, really touching, really good arc for that character, really good ending. And it feels very natural and logical that this would be the step that would keep Uhura grounded in the Federation, in Starfleet.
Yeah, I think what Hammer Hammer quickly became a favorite character, and I think to the point that like apparently Bruce Horak, who's the actor, knew all the scripts were written by the time he signed on, so he knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So like, I think that he was able to shine, and I don't think the writers quite knew how good that character would come off.
Sure.
Because I do wonder if they would have killed him if that were the case. But I think that when he comes out of that thing, and La'an has this moment where she knows what he's going to do. It comes as such a shock, because you think that the danger's done, the danger's over. We got the Gorn, we're good. And then there's one more thing we have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's really sad.
Yeah, that really. Yeah, I just wasn't. And like I definitely like when it gets to La'an and she's being chased by the thing, and I get where it's going with the Gorn and what's about to happen, and I'm like, all right, I see the trajectory of the end of your Alien episode. I got you.
Mm-hmm.
That was fine. That was fun. When it gets to the Hemmer stuff, I'm like, oh, I just wasn't ready.
Yeah,
I just wasn't ready for it. You bring up a good point. Like, maybe they wouldn't have had they known, and that would have been a shame. Like, as much as I'm sad to see him go, this was clearly the correct narrative choice to make. Uhura staying because of this works. The whole season works because of this choice. Her whole arc of this season works because of this decision. And I think this is where the streaming service idea of Star Trek probably shines, because you don't get this in the age of Next Generation Star Trek. As a person who hasn't watched it at all, allow me to say that you don't get like this kind of narrative decision. Like they would have said, he's really working. We should keep him on. Keep him around for a bit longer. We'll drag out that Uhura moment. We'll, like she's spinning her wheels until we're ready to let that character go. No, you let that character go now. It is time. The story dictates it. It happens. That really played to their strengths.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I think that like
sometimes a writer's room gets in its own way, and I think this is a time when it didn't get to happen because they did it all already.
I think you're right. I there's a lot of characters in the Next Generation. There's a lot of characters in Voyager and all the shows.
Network television in general.
It's a network television problem, right? It's I talked about it when Picard was airing its first season. I was doing a lot of research on just how the differences between streaming and network television were filmed. One of the biggest differences is that streaming is filmed all at once, and then it airs and it's done. Whereas network would film 13, air those 13, and then film 9. And that's how they would be like. That's how they would dictate which characters stayed on the show, which characters got more stuff to do, things like that. Every network show did that.
Right. Plus, it helps that the goal is not syndication.
That's true. Also true.
While I lament that there is not more Strange New Worlds to watch this week or soon, this was a tight season. This was a tight 10 episodes that really, really worked, and the fact that they were able to come in with such a gut punch before the finale is quite impressive. Yeah. I think by the standards of any streaming show, let alone a Star Trek one.
Yeah. I think that Hemmer's final moments also are really, really great when he says, just like Andoria, that's all really great. There's a discussion I wanted to kind of address, though. And it's about how Star Trek handles disability. So I think there's been a misreading of characters on this show, in a way.
Okay.
And now mind you, my disability is not physical, mine is mental. So like
Sure.
I'm not an authority, and this is just my opinion, and I want to be clear that anyone who does not share this opinion, I'm not attacking anybody here. I think Hemmer is the only truly disabled character on Strange New Worlds. In the sense that he has a physical disability. He's blind.
Sure.
And I do understand the discussion that has happened around his death, that they've killed one of the only prominent disabled characters on Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
And that I also lament that character's death. I think it's a good character. I think his story works. But I get the argument around the visibility of it and why that character was important.
Mm-hmm.
It is really nice that we know for a fact he is coming back, not Hemmer, but Bruce Horak is. So that's
He's
great.
got a twin out there.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, is it like the what's the beer movie?
Beer Fest.
Beer Fest. If Bruce Horak is coming back to the show, he's in season 2, but as a different character.
Mm-hmm.
People have talked about how La'an is disabled because of her PTSD, which there's an argument that could be made there. And she was written off the show in the same episode, and people were like, well, that's bad representation because you wrote off that mentally disabled character. But the one that really bugged me was Rukia, because people were like, Rukia was representative of people with what's the word I'm looking for?
Autoimmune deficiency.
No, it's
Chronic illness.
Chronic illness. Thank you.
Same thing, different words.
Sorry. Thank you.
It's okay.
So like the fact that people live with chronic illnesses, but I think that's where the misreading came from. I don't think La'an is meant to be coded as a character with disability. I do think that she is a character with PTSD. And I understand that's kind of like semantics, but I do think there's a slight difference there. Rukia is the one where I definitely saw people going like, oh, they wrote off the character who was representative of chronic illness. I was like, that character was actively dying. That is not the same as having a disability. That's character was going to die if she left that transporter.
Yeah, that's not the same. That's like because essentially it's like she's a character with cancer on pause.
Yes,
whenever she's in the transporter. Yeah. No, those are not the same things. And I feel comfortable and confident saying that, knowing people who have had chronic illness.
Yeah. And I think that
and like, I don't think that they would read that as the same. Maybe there are some people who, but I think you're projecting. And like, let's be clear, La'an and Hemmer are characters. Rukia, she's a device for Mbenga's story. A good one, but let's not get too crazy and call her like a representative character. She was in a handful of scenes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that there came a misreading of how Star Trek handled disabilities, because it started with Rukia, went to La'an, and then through Hemmer.
Is this a known Trek problem, or is this just like Strange New Worlds got the shit in the bag for some reason? It's
been a problem when it comes to the new show specifically, because they have been trying to be a lot more visible with queer coding characters, actively queer characters, disabled characters. Discovery got a lot of flack in its first season for having a character in a wheelchair. So like it's like a quote unquote new Trek issue, that because there's been such an effort to show characters with active disabilities that they can still like Hemmer, that they can still operate in Starfleet even though they are disabled. I think there's been a bigger target from the disabled community on all of this back. And then like you have Hemmer, who is good representation, then die. I think that's kind of where Discovery got a lot of that flack from that community because Hemmer's death.
Okay, go ahead.
So I want to say, if you guys look at people as a whole, and it's like you're the showrunners, you're the writers, you're like, okay, let me go and hire and write in characters that are a mixed bag of different cultures and different people. You have to kill off somebody. This is not the rainbow where everybody lives, everybody wins, everybody's happy. Now, then that's not a good show. People have to die off in Star Trek. Or
you're
people
right.
have to go off.
You're right. And you're absolutely correct. And I agree with you. I do think that the argument comes down to why do the people who have to die have to be the disabled characters, which I don't actually think is as big of a problem as people are making it out to be.
Yeah, if they're not disabled, then they're part of the LGBTQ community. If they're not part of that community and they're not disabled, they're part of the Black community, or they're part of the Asian community, or a minority. And it's like, okay, we only have like literally
only kill the white men.
Exactly, and that it's
I'm okay
nobody will be happy. So it's like I think that they did a wise decision. Like you guys both agree that this character means a lot to a lot of people, and his death was so impactful that he was able to go and bring life to another character.
See, you brought up what I was going to say, because I think that's the difference, right? Like, it's not about the fact that, like, oh, they killed this character, like like, if he had died in the same way for the same kind of reason that the other two characters who are not important characters and we just met in this episode died, that would be pretty shitty. And I would agree. I would think that was serviceless and like kind of rude to do. But this is still good representation. This is still a disabled character doing something impactful and important that is furthering not just a character, a legacy character of this franchise. He is instrumental to the reason that she's there in Star Trek in the original series. And they have done that. That's so important and impactful. And the fact that his death is emblematic of that choice makes this not a waste, makes this not careless. Now, had Ortegas been the character killed in this episode in such a manner, I would get some outrage, because that's not a character who's been given their just due and that they would have just taken out and is representative to some people. Like, I would understand. I think that's reasonable to be upset if they had done that. This is not that. This is a character doing something important to the narrative in the act of their own passing. And I think there's an amount where, like, sure, is it a bummer that in the next season of Strange New Worlds you will not have that blind character there as representation? Yeah, that is a bummer. However, they had an incredible arc and an important impact in the Star Trek franchise as a whole. And that's really more important, I think, than just keeping them around aimlessly.
Yeah, and their legacy will live on because of what they did here. Their sacrifice in like saving the many and being a pacifist and showcasing the love. I say pacifist, and because he's like he doesn't want to kill anything.
Mm-hmm. And he's a pacifist. He says he's a pacifist.
Yeah, so it's just like seeing that he's going to sacrifice himself for this cause and continue on. His legacy does live on through multiple characters now.
What's kind of cool about what Sparkz is saying is that, and what I didn't realize until he brought it up, what Hemmer did. Whenever you watch the original series now,
you have a different lens.
You have a different lens to look at Uhura.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, Uhura is now present for the rest of Star Trek and in Starfleet because of this moment. That's really important. Like, I think it's a disservice to, like, I think if you don't think that was an important and relevant passing for the character, then I don't know how much you were connecting to the character to begin with.
No, that's fair. That's a good point.
But
why don't we move off that?
I want to talk about Spock in this episode.
Let's talk about Spock.
How'd you guys like the Spock arc?
I like Spock. The Spark. I like Spock in general. I do really like Ethan Peck in this role. And I always kind of like seeing him. Like, it's the thing we talked about a lot with like the Kelvin movies. Like, when Spock is emotional and beyond, it rings a little hollow because he's been emotional the entire franchise. Mm-hmm. But here you get this moment where he like rages out, and like they really show like the full force of like what Vulcan rage can be. Because they talk about how primal their emotions are. They actually have much stronger emotions than humans do. It's just they suppress them. I think that was a really cool way to do it. Like, he's like the anger in my heart I let into my mind, or whatever it is.
Right.
It was cool.
How'd you guys feel about Sam pushing that out of him?
This is an interesting choice. Have it be Sam. So they haven't really shared a scene together. Like not
Yeah,
really.
like one. I think
Yeah.
one at the first episode or something.
Yeah.
Cookie, what do you think?
I loved it. I really loved it, and I love the fact that they did showcase like a small glimmer or glimpse of his power that he literally holds inside, and almost like a rocket ship. When you keep things bottled up, there eventually will be a breaking point, and that was his breaking point of getting pushed by Sam. Like, hey, let it out, and it's like, when I heard him yell, I was like, it's a weak yell. But then when I saw him like really rage out in his own way of expressing himself, because he didn't want to express his true potential of emotions there, but then when he did it in a solitude, or what he thought was his own solitude, and of course he wasn't there, it was really nice. I really enjoyed that moment, and the fact that somebody was there to calm him down and saying like, hey, it's okay to be human.
You've kind of passed through the bit on it when with the Gorn, but I think what works for me, to your point, what you've kind of led into, is what works for me and to have his anger is the moment with Chapel after the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really great moment.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great moment too. I think the whole thing works for me. I think Sam pushing it out of him. I think it's correct, right? That in Star Trek, the original series, Spock is still kind of learning things from human beings, right? Like this was new back then. That was the shtick, was that Spock is emotionless, so he's learning things. So there should be a Spock who's still, even before that, coming to grips with understanding emotion and comprehending it. So like him being completely novice at handling and engaging with rage, I think is a good idea.
And this is the first time that we've seen him lose someone in this way. Like regardless of Lieutenant Dale, regardless of what happens, that him, it's important for Spock to have the moment where he's trying to pull him back.
Right.
Where he's trying to save him from the Gorn, and then lose that character, and then he like loses him. He can't keep him. He couldn't hold on long enough, and so that like weighs on him.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. That and the Uhura arc are like it's those three main character things that are moving us forward: the Lon, Hemmer, and Uhura, and this. And I think that 2 out of 3 went really, really well.
Yeah, I think so too. I really like the Gorn design, the puppets when they're puppets. It's the baby ones I think are always puppets. No, they're not, but they are mostly puppets. Then the more like the bigger one is rarely a puppet, but there is one of it. And I think when the puppetry is kind of cool, and the CGI is good in the show in general. But I like that they decided to go for a practical look to it in some places.
Right.
And then there was.
I really like the design of that new alien they meet.
I was about to say the prosthetic work on that alien, the way that his mouth moves is really impressive. For such a small character. I thought it was a really impressive feat.
That and the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys wonder where the transformation comes from, where they're going from 4 feet to being on 2 feet and being more of like a humanoid body shape?
So I have a theory about this.
I'm going to answer first, Brandon, because I didn't know what an adult Gorn looked like until Brandon made me realize I've seen it before. Which is that in my mind, they look like the things from Zathura.
Oh, Jesus.
Which frankly, I think is pretty accurate based on this episode.
I can see that, yes.
The way canon always works is that the last time you saw something is the canonized version of it, right? So the last time we saw the Gorn wasn't in the original series. It was in Enterprise. And in Enterprise, they're a lot more reptilian. And they're a lot more... that's a fully CGI creature. And like, to be fair, it's not a great one because CGI back then, it's very dated. But it's a far more reptilian kind of look. It's no longer a dude in a suit. I think we're going to actually get another design, a new design for the Gorn that might closely match did either of you? I know the answer for one of you, but there's a Star Trek game that's set after Star Trek 09 and before Star Trek Into Darkness.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
There's a game where you it's a shooter where you play as Kirk and Spock, and it's a co-op shooter, and you go to New Vulcan.
When I go to Star Trek for my shooting games,
right? Yeah, it's kind of fun. A little buggy.
You've told me, yeah.
And so so you go to New Vulcan and you fight an infestation of Gorn.
Okay.
And they're the antagonists of that game. I think we're going to get kind of a hybrid of that design, which is a 4-legged design, like a much more kind of like raptor, 4-legged raptor design. And we're going to mix the two to make a kind of like a Gorn that can walk on 2 legs, but like an alien can also walk on 4.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think anyway.
In Enterprise. Go ahead, Sparkz.
So a Gorn was in Enterprise.
Yes.
Okay. People saw it.
It's not what you think.
What do you mean it's not what I think?
You've told me you know about this episode because you told me about this episode. It's the Mirror Universe episode of Enterprise.
Oh, okay. So that's where.
So it's not a Prime Gorn. It's a Mirror Gorn.
Yeah. All right.
So that's how they did it.
Sure.
I was just going to say that Enterprise still does take place before this.
I know, but it's not. But the Enterprise, the Prime timeline has never seen didn't see a Gorn in Enterprise. The Mirror timeline did.
Okay, gotcha.
So, to be fair, only La'an and Hemmer see the Gorn.
Hemmer doesn't
in person
see it
in this one and live, and then Hemmer dies.
That's a good point. And Hemmer
true.
doesn't.
Hemmer doesn't actually see it. So so it's just La'an. So, and La'an's already seen Gorn, so that's not shocking.
Yeah, that's true. All good points. I do wonder if we will see an adult Gorn eventually, though.
Now, someone does see they have it on a schematic version on the screen at one point.
Mm-hmm.
So they've seen, but they haven't seen it in real life, and that's different.
It's the fun line that they have to walk. Hey, I've always wanted Star Trek to revisit the Gorn. I always thought they were a cool species that could be a lot of fun and really scary if done well. And I'm really happy that Strange New Worlds is doing it.
I really like the bit where Spock. It just stuck with me. The bit where Spock calls Dale calls him Ensign.
Oh yeah,
and they're like, "You owe him a drink, Spock. Screwed up." That's why Sam's really mad. It's because Spock just didn't save him to get out of buying him that drink.
I like the line he says after that, which is like, another human drinking game, do they have no limit? Nope. Yeah. There's a line that La'an says is like the only time that they have a scene together with the girl where he's like, there's surviving and then there's living. I think that's a good scene. Because it really talks about like the theme of the season, right? The theme that like Pike is going through, and like Uhura has the same kind of just like talk with Hemmer in their own way, where Hemmer's like, you're just too scared to let people in. You're too scared to you're too scared to like live.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good encapsulation of what this season has been about.
Sure.
So real quickly, K7 is mentioned. K7 is the famous episode from the Trouble with Tribbles. That's cool.
Oh,
I like that episode. I wrote here, Cadet Chia, who has always been there.
Definitely.
Here's something that I don't love, which is that the Sombra class starship is just a Constitution class starship. That bugged me.
Well, why does that bug you?
Because like they're like, oh, it's a Sombra class ship. It's unique, but like it's just a Constitution class. There's no different. Maybe it's smaller, but that's just a Constitution class. Now, and in fairness, they did it because they could reuse the same sets that they have. They just turn off the lights, and so like, fine, cool, whatever. Then call it a Constitution class. Just be like, oh, another Constitution class fell. It didn't fall out of the sky. But like another Constitution class crashed. Okay, that's all you have to do.
Maybe it has something different about it that's not cosmetic.
Maybe
Maybe it's the people.
I looked it up. It's got a crew of 99, which they say in the episode, which means it's a smaller ship. It's a Constitution class because Mbenga says built with the same parts of Constitution class, and it's meant to be smaller than the Enterprise.
Well, there you go. Then it's a different class.
No, just call it a Constitution class.
But it's smaller.
But it's smaller.
But that's
like a con.
That's
con
all
class.
superficial. That's all superficial.
Everything is superficial.
Just call it a Constitution class, man. Nobody will care. There's 50 Constitution class
You
starships in the original series.
What? Brandon, nobody else cared but you.
But you.
Nobody here, but I'm not the only one who didn't care.
I know,
Who
but
didn't care?
let's widen out the viewership of Strange New Worlds and the percentage that cared about that and the percentage that didn't.
But nobody would care if you just made it a Constitution class starship.
That's true.
Nobody would care anyway.
Right.
And they changed it to Sombra because like they already had the like production designer talked about this, how they filmed the exterior scenes on the volume, on their version of the volume. So like they already made that ship, and in the original the script it was Constitution class, but then they changed it after the fact, and they couldn't go back and change it in post.
Well, then there you go. That's it.
Because that's the problem with the volume, is that once it's on that screen, you can't change it.
Well, there you go. Then we just accept that it's a different class because it's smaller.
I just call it a Constitution class.
But they can't. They just said.
I know. I understand
they
they can't. It's a Constitution class. Okay. Anyway,
Oh man, that was good.
I think that's every note I have for this episode. Yeah. Anyone else got anything for this episode? Or do you want to move on to the next?
I think we're good. We're almost
I'm
an
good.
hour in, and we got a whole other big episode to talk about.
We got a big episode to talk about. I was actually really surprised that that one, that this one took as long as it did. So, all right. So we'll move on to episode 10, Equality of Mercy. And I had no idea what to expect with this episode. And this is my favorite episode of the season.
It's a good one.
It is.
What do you guys think?
It's a really good episode. I enjoy this a lot. I like some callbacks to certain characters' voices that we get to hear, which was great. And I think that's when I texted you and I was like, I got chills, bro. I got chills.
When Sparkz, I'm going to be really nerdy for a minute of something that's going to go right out of your right over your head. When when Future Pike shows up,
and I can already know what you're talking about.
And he's wearing what's called the Monster Maroons, which are traditionally from Wrath of Khan and onward. Those are my favorite uniforms.
I've seen them.
And I let out this kind of guttural growl. That's the only way I can explain it. And the theme song hadn't even played yet, and I'm like, I have no idea what the hell's happening now, because the trailer for the episode was just like, oh, it's this big battle between the Enterprise and the Federation and something else, who knows? And then this happened. I'm like, what the? Oh my god!
Cookie, this is the third time I've heard about Brandon's guttural growl at watching this episode, and every time I'm hearing the Tim Allen Home Improvement sound.
It's not too far off.
No, the that he does the pictures of.
It's not too far off.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's so funny. And it's funny because once that happened, I immediately thought of Brandon, because uniforms and you're a uniform guy. So once I saw this, I was like, he's got to be smiling.
The fact that the thing is the fact that a uniform can get me so excited. It's my favorite uniform. I love this uniform design. They Strange New Worlds it, which was they modified it for this show, for the aesthetic of the show, which I think worked really well. They were able to keep a lot of they were able to keep the white from this side, the white rank little thing, and so they have his admiral rank, which looks just like it did in Wrath of Khan. They were able to keep kind of the little skirt that it kind of flares out into, the kind of the pleated collar, but then they were able to kind of make it Strange New Worlds with it's got the delta design on the shoulder and the arms, which is what the Strange New World uniform looks like. And I think that they really did a good job of, I guess, not updating it, but just kind of matching it. It's what Strange New
Matching
World
and
does really well.
modernizing it.
Right, it's what Strange New Worlds does really well, which is kind of paying tribute to, but like not fixing, but like, it's just everything that this show does. Huh?
Updating.
Updating, yeah. I guess I kind of feel like a stronger word than updating, but like it just kind of everything that this show
Revamping.
does, it feels classic but modern. Like everything I see on this ship, I'm like, yes, that's the original series. Everything.
Retro.
It kind of retro-esque. Anyway, I was really excited to see this uniform, and from then on, I think this episode goes in a completely ballsy direction.
It very much felt like we wrote this just in case this was a one and done.
What's funny is we've talked about it previously in Picard, where when you deal with timeline issues, like we had this wonderful debate on like timeline, and I destroyed Brandon's mind because I had to make him think so much. And then while this one's playing on, I couldn't help but just like, oh, this is gonna be so great when I go and talk to Brandon, and I just like destroy his brain again with timeline. But they executed very well.
There's nothing as bad as what happened on Picard season 2.
No, not at all.
What this episode does is it's basically says, what if Captain Pike was the captain in the original series? Specifically in the one episode, The Balance of Terror, which is what this episode is doing.
So this event does happen?
Yes, it's from an episode called The Balance of Terror.
Okay.
It's a very good episode. I rewatched it after I watched this episode because I wanted to see how they matched it, and they actually matched it very well. It's a lot of the same blocking that they do, a lot of the same camera work, lighting, a lot of dialogue is reused, but all of it feels fresh and new. And I think this was the episode where they were like kind of reassuring people that like this show does not end with Captain Pike not being in this chair. It has to. Because there's been a lot of talk like, oh, will this show, and kind of like we talked, like I kind of had this feeling. Yeah, will this show work on it?
Will there be a new timeline? Right.
Like there's this thing of like the first episode I kind of had this thought like, okay, well, if you want, I mean, I guess you could, because like Captain Pike was really working, this whole crew was really working. You could just say, we figured out how to not get him into the chair. But then this episode comes around and says, no, he has to get into this chair, because if he doesn't, he basically gets in the way of destiny.
Literally the two most important people in the world are Kirk and Spock, and if Pike doesn't end up in that damn chair,
that's essentially what it is.
No franchise.
In a world where Kirk and Spock are not together, things got a lot worse. Yeah, I really like this episode though, just in general. We brought back the time crystals from Borath. Sure, whatever. You want to remind me of Discovery for a minute? Fine. Sparkz. I want to fill in Sparkz a little bit, because those are the.
I got it. You touch the thing, you travel in time. I don't need it. Like
that's how Pike knows about his future. Is he touched a time crystal?
Sure, I think that they say that at one point.
Cookie, you were gonna say?
I like the fact that we did get a chance to revisit a melting face Pike, and it just brought back scary memories for me, which was wonderful and terrifying at the same time. And this is such a great storyline, this particular episode, with if you can rewrite your own history, go back in time and save your life and potentially save these kids' lives, would you do it? And it's like, yeah, I if I could go and save my life and save these kids' lives, absolutely, I would go and do it, so this event never happens. But his particular point in time is so poignant to the history of Star Trek that without it, everything crumbles.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go.
Brandon, you watched the original episode. Does it always relate does it involve in any way importantly the dad that Pike is talking to at the beginning, and then in the alternate mission.
Kinda. It's not so the guy that we meet in the Balance of Terror on that station, because that station moment when it's destroyed is
The
recreated.
outpost.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's recreated verbatim.
Is that why he like blows backwards in a weird way?
Yes, that's exactly what happens.
I was like, wow, that looks kind of old school for what this show usually does.
His name is Hansen Al Sahad.
Sure. I don't know
that.
but sure.
In the original series, his name is Hansen. That's the only name we get.
Ah, okay.
So yes.
So they were very smart.
Yeah.
Okay, cute. So this explains why we knew when the show was starting that Kirk was in the second season and who it was.
Yes.
And you were like, why do we know this?
Yeah,
why.
I had thought that Kirk might show up in the last episode of this season because
Mm-hmm.
there's the promo image they sent us. Well, not that they didn't send us, but like the promo image they like put out was him in the captain's chair of a ship, and we all assumed it was the Farragut. We were right because that promo shot was from this episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's not from the second season, and I don't know, how we feel about this Kirk.
He seems like a very good blend between Cookie doesn't like it. Cookie, I have no pretentious opinions. My Kirk is not Shatner. It's Christopher Pine. So that just comes from what I've watched and what I haven't. I'm not saying Shatner's is bad by any means.
So what I'm hearing
felt
is
like
you think Shatner's terrible.
No, with a fair amount of like, I've seen some things.
Yeah.
Clips, what have you. This seems like a nice in between of the two, Christopher Pine and young William Shatner.
Yeah. Cookie,
personally, I find it in between.
The biggest thing is with both actors, Shatner and Pine, is them as human beings, not as characters, have charisma. And when you put them in a character who is nothing but charisma, and then you have this guy who doesn't have that same charisma, it's missing something. And that's what it is. It's just missing the charisma that he has, that he can persuade you and sway you to do things you didn't think you were going to do. And that's something that William Shatner and Chris Pine do very well in that character, is they have ability to convey a message so prominently that it compels you to do what they say.
Sparkz, do you have a rebuttal?
I don't know if that's. I don't know how fair it is to judge.
And he's tiny.
This Kirk's performance for that.
He's just so tiny.
Okay, I got news for you. Shatner's not that tall either.
I was going to say Shatner is pretty tiny.
I met him in person, but like Shatner in the show, he's fit. This dude just looks like he's skin and bone. Like he needed to put on some meat on him.
Well, I mean, Cookie, this is 7 years in an alternate timeline.
Chris Pine had some meat on him too.
The Farragut is not.
Chris Pine's pretty skinny in the original Star Trek. Yes. Stop it.
But he looks a little bit more fit.
That's just because Chris Pine's a good-looking guy. Come on, he's pretty. He looks no different under the shirt than this guy.
You might be right.
I
will grant you the charisma, but that's because they gave all the charisma to Pike. Okay. Because Pike's the main character.
I will say, as a first outing, I wasn't too impressed. I'm eager to see what the next time we see him in, because we know he's in season 2. I want to see this guy. I want to give this guy a chance, because like I'm not opposed to recasting the original characters. You want to recast Kirk, sure. Well, I much prefer it than de-aging William Shatner, a 90-year-old man. So like, there's a lot of caveats that I kind of have to understand. Like this is not our Kirk. This is an alternate timeline where he never left the Farragut for the Enterprise. So like, okay, I do kind of understand the charisma thing. I do think I have that same issue that Pine, when Chris Pine first showed up, like I fell in love with Chris Pine's Captain Kirk almost immediately. Like I think that's a really good movie to as far as those characters. Like I really connected with those versions of those characters in general.
It's really hard to compare anything to the best Chris.
That's true.
It's Chris Pine. I'd feel that way in any role.
And so like we've got two very good Captain Kirks. I think we got William Shatner and we got Chris Pine. I want there to be a third very good Captain Kirk with Paul Wesley, and I'm willing to give him a second chance. As far as the first chance goes, I like how he's written. I actually really like how he's written. I think they write a very good Kirk. Even Sam Kirk, like when he's like describing who Kirk is, that is who Kirk is. They nail that.
Yeah, they did a good job.
Even in a way that I don't think Chris Pine ever got to until Beyond, because I think they wrote Kirk as too much of a hothead in the original, in the first two Kelvin movies.
I agree.
And so like I think they wrote him well, so they have an understanding of Kirk. So I'm willing to give Paul Wesley another chance because I want to fall in love with him as Captain Kirk.
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm standing, though.
I felt like the line sounded like good Kirk.
I did. I agree. A lot of them are lifted from the original series, though.
Well, that would be why. Sounds like real good Kirk to me.
Ortega's slips into a role of the Balance of Terror, played by a character called Lieutenant Styles, who after they find out what the Romulans look like, immediately goes like hardcore racist against Spock. He's just like, Spock, you're a Romulan spy, and he's like, Kirk is like, had to really like shut him down. They don't go that far with Ortegas, but I do like that they kind of slip Ortegas into a more antagonistic role.
And Pike has to go and even address her and tell her like, yo, chill out.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have to be honest with you. I was kind of bummed that was Ortegas.
Yeah.
Just didn't feel quite right to me.
Yeah.
I felt like you already had the clear candidate for who should have said that because of the previous episode, and it was Sam.
Oh, that's a good point.
That is very good point.
I think Sam was already predisposed to have a problem with Vulcan stuff, and for him to jump to that leap would have felt cohesive. Whereas Ortegas, are you telling me that Ortegas can be completely accepting of other people's like sexual preferences and borderline polyamorous, but oh boy, like is gonna jump right up to the bat and like have a problem with somebody looking a little too much like somebody else? Like that was a little like, come on, Ortegas is the one. Ortegas, are we sure, guys? This is how we want to define the character, so we haven't done enough with her.
It can only be explained by it being 7 years in the future, and we don't know what happened to her in the interim.
That's true, and perhaps in a season, as you and I have talked about before, and certainly as I think we all are in agreement of, where we had more Ortegas development to weigh it against, I might not feel as strongly about it. But because this is one of the most prominent amounts of development with actual Ortegas, not Ortegas in a fantasy setting of a book or something like that, this kind of bummed me out that this is the person they decided was the one who had a problem with Spock.
I'll agree with that.
I also like your choice too with choosing Sam, because that would have emphasized a little bit more with Spock and like Shatner's role together as really being best friends and being brothers. And it's like, my brother hated you, but I love you. That's just, for me, would be so cool.
I do like when the Farragut gets there and like Kirk and Spock start conversing through the view screen. There's immediately like a connection, like, oh, very good, Mr. Spock. Like they immediately like fall in love with each other.
That was cool. So good.
Yeah, no, I don't want to take away lines from the actor playing Ortegas necessarily, because I really enjoy them, but like I felt like that was kind of like, it felt out of character of who I have, perhaps on my part, built up Ortegas to be in my mind, because they have not quite given me quite enough to fill it all out. But it felt oppositional to who I think that is.
I don't think you're wrong. I think that there's been I know that because I follow the actress on Twitter, like I know that there was discussions of like what could have happened in the interim to get her to this point, but I do think they worked backwards. They said we want Ortegas to fill this role of Lieutenant Styles from Balance of Terror. Well, how do we think we got there? And perhaps that might not have been the best way to go.
I'll forgive it completely if in the second season we get more clearly not in that direction Ortegas development.
Yeah. I would like to believe that. it sucks that like the best outcome for the Enterprise is one where Pike gets horribly mangled and put into a wheelchair for the rest of his life.
Destiny's a bitch, man. Sorry,
Yeah.
you're not the chosen one. You ain't Kirk. You ain't Spock.
You ain't
don't
Neo.
matter.
and like I get like what Pike does is important. Like he is an important captain of Starfleet, but like he's not Captain Kirk. And I kind of like that this episode like reinforced that like, hey, we all know you like Captain Pike, right? He's not Captain Kirk though.
But now he's the most important captain in Starfleet.
Oh, you're right, because he has to do the thing so that Kirk and Spock can be best friends forever.
Yeah, this is more than just like I'm saving those cadets. It's I understand now that Kirk and Spock are the future, and without me making this decision, the entire franchise of Star Trek doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Question for you guys.
Go ahead.
To chime on to your Ortegas bit, since we haven't got a lot of character development with certain characters and we're filling those void gaps in, this could be a great opportunity for these show writers to go and now build on Ortegas and say like, hey, I want to apologize, Spock, for how I treated you. This is the reason why. And let me open
also
up
a future
to
that doesn't exist.
You kind of forgot what we were doing here,
time, man. Shut it down.
No, but much to your point, like the answer to this has to be countering it with that.
Yeah.
Now we need Ortegas developed in season 2 in a specifically not racist direction.
Yes.
Would be great. I would love that.
I do think they don't go the way of she is racist, but she does hate Romulans. I think that was an important distinction that they made there. Although that scene when they figure out the Romulans, that's lifted right from the show, by the way, from the original show. That whole
Sure.
like there's the Romulans, and then she turns back and like the light on the eyes. That's so good.
But that's all the more reason why it should have been Sam, at least in the context of Strange New Worlds as we had it already. Sam was actively prejudicial against Spock for being Vulcan and lacking emotion in the previous episode. 7 years down the road from that point, in a not so good future, I could totally buy that Sam was like, oh, yo, nope. Vulcans are bad. I see it now. I see it clear. It just didn't have to be Ortegas.
Well,
I like how
with
Kirk
Ortegas, I was gonna say with Ortegas, when Pike talks to her about saying like, hey, where's number one? She's like, you don't remember? So there was some
that was still on.
Oh, it was. Okay, never mind.
That was still
Disregard.
on.
Forget what I was gonna say. They should have put in Ortegas then. That would have answered the question.
Yeah, I do think Una's where we leave Una at the end, where she's arrested, I think probably had an adverse effect on the entire crew. And what? Go ahead.
I just really like the return of Winona Earp. Really glad she's here.
That's right. Captain Patel was Winona Earp in that show that you watched.
Winona Earp. Yes.
Winona Earp, yeah. I didn't want to repeat the name.
No, I
already
get
said it.
Yeah, but not enough people watch that show. It's on Netflix. Go watch it.
What's it called again? I couldn't remember.
Oh, Winona Earp. It's
okay. Thank you.
It's
called Van
based on
Helsing.
comics. Stop it. that's slanderous. How dare you?
Sorry.
Winona Earp is a significantly better show.
Kirk has this moment when they're in the writing room when they're together, and they're all kind of like figuring out like, why didn't we know that Vulcans and Romulans look the same? And he has and Kirk has this moment. It's like, perhaps the Romulans timed it this way. Maybe they sent that message so that we would know, and that would destabilize human and Vulcan relationships. You know, if they want a war, that would do it. Mm-hmm. I think that was a good way to spin that. Because the Romulan War, they say it in the opening, but it was 100 years ago. Lasted for about 10 years and led to the forming of the Federation. Star Trek Enterprise was going to do that story, but they were canceled just before they did it. Mm-hmm. Like they were canceled. Like the year the last season was set is the year before the Romulan War starts. And then they were canceled, and that was a bummer because they really wanted to do that. So it's all in books now, but like, they had to like, there's like a point that the Romulans, they would have to walk a line because in the original series, this goes back to like bending canon. Star Trek's been bending canon for decades. The original series establishes that 100 years ago, starships didn't have view screens. But when we go to Star Trek Enterprise, which was 120 years ago, they had view screens. Because that's just boring. You can't have a starship without a view screen. So they had to do a lot of the same thing with that Strange New Worlds did with the Gorn, which is like, oh, well, they don't see a Romulan.
Well, maybe non-Constitution class ships didn't have view screens.
There were no Constitution class ships in Starfleet 100 years ago.
What's the Enterprise?
The Enterprise, the Archer's Enterprise is not a Constitution class.
Okay.
Kirk's Enterprise is a Constitution class.
I thought Sparkz was just trying to throw some shade. That's all.
He is, but I can name it. I can name them all. The first Enterprise is an NX class. The second Enterprise is a Constitution class.
Okay, wait, stop though. So the first one's an NX class?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe those ones just didn't have view screens.
But they did. That's the show. That's what the show.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I messed up my sentence. I mean everything that wasn't that.
There were only 2 ships in service.
Well, the other ships didn't have view screens.
The other ship was an NX class. We've seen it. It's the Columbia.
But it didn't have view screens though.
Watch more Star Trek.
I'm going by Star Trek canon. They said 100 years ago they didn't have view screens.
But that's the bending of the canon that they would just have to. The animated series also has this war that's like set 250 years ago, which is like now. So like, there's no way that like Star Trek. Again, you gotta. When it comes to the original series, you have to bend things.
Well, the animated series isn't canon though. We've talked about that.
I know, but like that's the thing. Like when it comes to the original series, you have to bend canon, and you've always had to. The people talking about like Strange New Worlds isn't the first one to do it. Enterprise did it. Deep Space Nine did it. Next Generation did it. They all did it. It's just we care now.
No, just people are pickier.
Just people are pickier. Yeah, that's a good point. I really like the line. Who's hailing us? The captain of it's Captain Sir Jim Kirk, Sam's brother.
That was
from now on, Jim Kirk is Sam's brother, and I quite like that. It reminded me of the reason why I laughed really hard about that is it reminded me of a story that I've definitely told Sparkz, but I haven't told you, Cookie, where I was in line for a movie. It was like a midnight premiere for a movie. I don't remember the movie, and there were these 2 girls in front of us, and they were talking about and they were like, it's with that show. It's it's with that show. I can't remember the sister's name. Shit, that's the whole point of the joke. Haley, it's like what's that show? Is you Haley Duff's sister?
Oh, okay, Lizzie McGuire.
Yeah, and so they were talking about Hillary Duff, but like the fact that they remembered Haley Duff but not Hillary Duff,
but not Hillary,
was really funny to me because Hillary Duff was the more famous person,
right?
For sure.
And so like so the Sam Kirk joke made me laugh because of that.
I got you.
That was really
it's funny. Like, oh yeah, one of the sisters of T.J. Mowry.
Yeah, exactly. Who are they?
Tia and Tamara.
Oh yeah.
From Sister Sister,
mm-hmm.
which are definitely more famous than TJ.
Yeah.
Didn't even know they had another sister.
That didn't work if you didn't watch Disney Channel. What do you mean it's not a sister, it's a brother.
Oh, see that exactly.
TJ
I
Mowry
didn't have Disney Channel as a kid.
TJ Mowry was the one who had his own sitcom where he was like a prodigy genius.
Okay.
I forget the name, and he was like a 10-year-old going to high school.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I remember now.
And he got that show because of the popularity of his older sisters. And then he was the voice of Wade on Kim Possible. And then I don't know what he ever did after that.
I remember that character. I had a friend on Twitter recently discover that Elizabeth Olsen is related to Mary-Kate and Ashley.
That's a better one.
Yeah.
Mary-Kate and Ashley's sister, Elizabeth Olsen. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that one.
The more
That's
popular
a better
one.
That's a better one.
Anyway. Sam Kirk. I hope we get more of Sam Kirk in general, but I liked him in this episode a lot.
I love his mustache.
Where is Sam in the Kelvin timeline?
Oh, we actually meet him. It's in the beginning. It's in the beginning. After the Kelvin is destroyed, and we jump to Kirk stealing a car. He passes by a kid walking the street, and he goes, "Hey, George." That's George Samuel Kirk.
Oh, boy. Okay, got it.
Yeah, they really screwed that up.
That's fine.
I can't remember if Sam is supposed to be the older or younger brother. I think he's supposed to be the older brother.
Yeah, I would assume.
But it was nice because we've never seen them together on screen outside of a dead body. So like it was really nice that we actually got like, hey Sam, hey Jim, and then they embrace, and it was
In an
nice.
alternate timeline, they're buddies.
In the alternate timeline, they still have. And in the alternate timeline, Sam Kirk didn't leave the Enterprise. So like his brother took over. He was like, "Peace out, baby."
Can't have two Kirks on a ship. That's just confusing.
Yeah, you're right. And like he didn't meet his wife, I guess. This episode, speaking of wife, this episode starts with a wedding. It's the same wedding from the original series episode. It also starts with a wedding.
Yes, it does.
And the death is reversed. So it's
the guy dies.
The guy dies in the original series episode, and the girl lives.
Yep.
But she's also the only. So he's also the only casualty in like the good timeline. He's the only person who died in this conflict. But in this one, a lot more people got really screwed up.
Because it's the bad timeline. Pike can't change the future.
Spock, woof.
I was genuinely shocked they didn't put Uhura in a wig.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because she's wearing the
uniform. It was
uniform.
probably for the better, but I was surprised.
Because she's wearing the uniform. The uniform is designed to look like it.
And she's got the big earrings.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Kirk just comes on the ship, and Sam Kirk leaves. Aurora grows out her hair.
I don't think that's a problem. I think that like notoriously wigs, especially on like black actors, have not gone well.
Sure.
So just staying away from it, probably not a bad decision.
Yeah, it doesn't quite, and it honestly doesn't matter. So Sparkz, not death, but he gets mangled. He gets really badly screwed up.
Yeah,
I was really.
They
like a shark attack in space.
Roles almost, because she says that he'll never be the same again.
And Pike says to his future self, or his future self says, "Is like you're thinking that like you just traded your fate for his," and it's kind of messed up because like this whole thing started because Pike wanted to do a good thing, right? It's not necessarily that he wants to live, even though he does. He wants to like save these kids. The two kids die in this action. He wants to save them. He doesn't want to know that these kids are going to die.
Right. That's a burden of knowledge that's really hard to have, that especially for someone as morally staunchant as our Captain Pike, where you know that people will die and you could do something about it. How do you not?
And meeting them like face to face, I think that's what like set him on this path of righteousness.
That was a great that was a great moment. Anson Mount's really on fire in this episode.
Yeah, he really is.
But that was a really great moment when he's just like rattled and like slowly taking it in and leaves. I thought that was really good.
There's a moment where you can tell that you can see like how the timeline, like what is the moment. I watched it the second time. Like you can tell exactly what the moment is that set off this really bad future. And it's the moment where Pike decides to talk to the Romulans. He's like, hey, let's have a dialogue. You get 2 hours. We get 2 hours. We repair our ships. And then what happens. And then when that ends, I go, that's it. That's what happened. That's the difference.
I agree with you that was quite clear, which is why there's only one part of this episode I really don't like. And it's the line that the lady Romulan says where she's like, I have to thank you, Christopher Pike. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have known that Starfleet would have so weak. And then attacks them. And I'm like, all right. I mean, like, I think we all got it before you said that.
There's twice where they reinforce that, like, this. The reason is because Pike didn't act. And it's the Praetor talking about it on the flagship. And then then Kirk comes in and goes, if you had just attacked them, it would have been fine.
And I thought those ones were okay. They didn't feel as like pointed, but that one felt like you're all about to die. And let me tell you, Christopher Pike, it's all your fault. If only you could change the past. And I'm like, okay, come on. That was a little much.
I really like the design of the Romulan ship. I know it's just a classic design. but I was happy to see it again. The whole thing, like the whole like the plasma weapon, that's all from it's all like updated, basically updated visuals from the original series episode, and looked awesome. The biggest, I guess the biggest difference between the two episodes isn't just that, it's just that the Farragut is there, because it's just the Enterprise in the original episode. There's no other ship.
Sure. But La'an's also on it, so things are different now.
But La'an, I guess, maybe the first officer. Good for her.
Yeah, kind of weird. Like, I just don't know about this whole La'an leaving the whatever. We'll sort it out in season 2. But then like carrying it over into this, and I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I that's why I think of like, she's back on the Enterprise in the next season.
I'm sure that's true. I'm sure they're not just not having that actor.
Yeah, maybe like maybe not in the first episode, but I'm sure by the middle of the show she's back.
Yeah,
this could be a spinoff.
Another one.
Are they gonna spin? Are they gonna spin off Strange New Worlds? What would the spinoff be? Kirk and the Farragut?
La'an, quest for the Gorn.
No more spinoffs. We're good. You had your chance with one more spinoff with Picard.
Cookie, you're probably right though that like it'll be an episode that takes place almost entirely on the Farragut with La'an and Kirk. That's probably true.
The first image we saw of Paul Wesley on Star Trek was with La'an. So
there you go.
That's why they decided to leak it. That's why they decided to announce it, because everyone's like, who the hell is Paul Wesley playing? And nobody would have guessed Kirk. They didn't have to tell us. I always found that was funny, because they're just like, oh, who's Paul Wesley playing? Oh, they're going to figure out it's Kirk.
The music was of particularly cute note in this episode. Whenever they had a Kirk moment or a Kirk and Spock moment
they played the original theme.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They also play the Romulan theme from the original series, when specifically when the Romulan reveal happens. That's a musical sting from the original series, which I liked. There's the Romulan design. I've talked about a lot how Discovery, I think, over designed their classic aliens. And I was happy to see that Strange New Worlds just kept the classic Romulan design as is without any updates.
Strange New Worlds knows that the closer it looks to original Star Trek, the better the show is doing.
Yeah, that's also true. Which is why I'm really curious if we ever see a Klingon. What the hell are they going to look like?
When do Ferengis come into play?
Next gen. That's the First Contact.
Okay.
So it's likely we won't see a Ferengi in this season, in this show.
Likely. But not impossible, Cookie.
Right, exactly, because they showed up in Enterprise. So I can't say that it is impossible. It's just unlikely that they will be here.
They're just gonna bend the timeline. It's fine, it's curved. I mean, that's not breaking it.
Again, that's what Enterprise did. Enterprise was like, oh, they met a Ferengi, but they didn't learn the name. They didn't know it was a Ferengi, so that's fine.
You just keep bending until it's a circle.
So it's a snake eating its own tail.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, the 2266 timeline. They say that the year in this episode is 2266, which is 7 years in the future from where we last had Pike. That fixes a timeline issue that I've had, which is that Pike keeps talking about how his accident is in 10 years time, which puts it in 2269. And so that they were like, no, it's 7 years. Pike has just kind of been rounding up.
Gotcha.
I was happy about that.
Did he say 10 years on this show?
Yeah, he said 10 years in the first episode.
Maybe he's just carrying over. Was it 10 years in Discovery?
Well, Discovery is only a year before Strange New Worlds.
So 8 years in Discovery.
So it's 8 years in Discovery, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think I always kind of assumed that they were just rounding up, or that Pike didn't have an exact figure. He just kind of knew a general time frame of when it would happen. But he left the Enterprise before that accident, so it's not even like the accident is the reason why he's not captain of the Enterprise.
Right.
He left the Enterprise, and then the accident happened after. So
right. So we still don't know then.
And I think it's actually really interesting that like he has this moment. One of the other things that I think this show does really well is two things. One, when he meets Kirk, he's like, I think I was supposed to meet you. I think you were too. I think I was supposed to meet you too. The moment at the end kind of says to me that like this is why Kirk is in command of the Enterprise. Pike will step down and suggest Kirk to be captain of the Enterprise because of this, because of what happened here, and I think that comes off pretty well. And then the other thing is that like Spock, it's always not a plot hole, but it's really wild that in the original series, Spock basically risks a court-martial and Kirk's entire career to hijack the Enterprise and save Pike. This show really adds validity to why he did that, because Pike was really important to him, and he wanted Pike to have a happy ending, which he does end up having.
Yeah,
and I think that this show's really good. I really like the show, guys.
it is. It's a very good show. This was a good episode, even without knowing much Star Trek stuff.
I mean, that's been the whole show for you, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, like this was the most heavy-handed in the Star Trek,
like the lore of Star Trek. Yeah,
because like I'm watching the episode and I'm like, I suppose this happens in the original series at some point, but I don't know.
The Romulan line and another reality. I could have called you friend. That's from the original series, also.
Cute.
Happens in a very different context, but yeah. But the whole like, I think it was really ballsy to basically say, we're not just doing a prequel, but we're actually going to remake an episode. And have it be probably the best episode of the whole series so far is wild.
I gotta think about that, but maybe.
I mean, this season was so strong. Like, I honestly don't. Every episode has been like, oh, this is my favorite. Oh, this is my favorite. Oh, this is my favorite.
I think I have a soft spot for the first like La'an focused episode.
Which one was
with
that?
The Gorn. The first one that addressed the Gorn.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
It is. Yeah,
that might be my top of the season, to be honest.
Yeah. The girl that I'm Spock. There's a bit in this where they talk about how, because it's not just that like Kirk needs to be on the Enterprise, it's also that like Spock is important. There's an episode of the Next Generation where he's trying to merge. He's trying to basically be like, hey, Romulans and Vulcans, we share ancestry. Why don't we come back together? He was really important for that. I'm glad that they brought that back around in this episode, that like Pike was like, it's not just that you were on the bridge, is that Spock died.
Right. Because doesn't Nero hate him for that?
Yeah, no, Nero hates him because he blames Spock for the destruction of Romulus.
Right. Because Romulus was weak?
No, because Romulus was destroyed by a star.
Well, how's that Spock's fault? I don't remember. I haven't seen this movie in a while.
Well, it's not Spock's fault. Spock was so in the movie, just real quickly, in the movie, Spock is is going to use red matter to absorb the star before it wipes out most of the Beta Quadrant.
Oh, okay, yeah. Uh-huh.
And then he doesn't get there in time.
No, I get it. We don't need to do that now. I got it.
And it destroys Romulus.
Nero's my only experience with Romulans before this, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah, that's true, right?
Again, I'm a newbie.
Man, I would have loved it if this Romulan goes, "Hi, Christopher, I'm Nero."
That would have been pretty good.
The Romulan commander was played by Spock's dad in the first season of the original series. The guy who played Sarek. Everyone's joking that the guy who plays Sarek in Discovery should have played him in this. Would have been fun. Let's see. Do you guys have any more notes? Because I think I'm about out.
No, I'm good.
Cookie? Okay.
I'm wonderful. I love this show so much.
Yeah. I'm so sad it's done.
I wish there were more episodes.
I know we're getting more, but I miss it already.
I think 10 turned out to be a good number. Because I don't think there's a weak episode.
I agree.
There's no episode where I'm like, that one though. And I'm always happy when I can come out of a season, especially of a streaming show, and feel that way. So like if this was the right number of episodes, this was the right number of episodes. I'm happy.
I think the episodic storytelling of it also helped, because you don't need to pad. You don't need an overarching story that you need to pad for time to fill episodes.
That's another one of the reasons why I did really like the Mbenga comment about the girl in the previous episode, is because I was like, yeah, we can be episodic, but like what happened to the characters can still have happened and matter. Yeah. And be on their mind. You know, like Rukia can have just been lost to him in the last episode, and like we're doing a whole other story that's not connected to that, but Mbenga can still be thinking about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I like the idea that, like, you know, Discovery and Picard, I think they always fumble because, you know, the Marvel shows do this too. Stranger Things, maybe less so. Stranger Things had like a B plot problem, but like all sorts of streaming shows. I don't mean to just call out just a few. Those are just the ones on my mind.
This was why Mandalorian was good too, right?
Yeah, Mandalorian was good for much the same reason, because it was
episodic. Yeah. Even though it had its overarching plot, I think like Strange New Worlds is kind of unique in a way right now in the television landscape, because it doesn't have that overarching thing. Like there's no thing from episode 1 that I'm like, this is the thing we're doing at the end of this season. Yeah. And I appreciate that. I think it's the most important thing, like, because episodic television gives me like anxiety, because it makes me think we're going back to like network television ways, where it's like, this episode kind of doesn't matter, and I'm like, oh, it's always scary, because that means that the writing might be terrible. And I don't want to go back to those days, but like I think this is the right blend of, well, the narrative of what's happening, the adventure, the story can be self-contained to this episode, but the characters are moving forward.
Yeah.
They are going towards something new. It's the same reason why, like, I'm a big fan of Cookie might not know this about me, but like I'm a big fan of modern cartoon animation, like most shows on Cartoon Network and things like that, because the children can be going through different adventures episode to episode, but they are growing, and the things that have happened to them are changing them. And I think that's the important thing, that like kids television should represent, that like these things are events that have occurred to these kids, and it does help them grow, even if their adventures are more or less standalone.
That's what was so influential about Adventure Time.
Right. Adventure Time, regular show.
Regular show.
They busted open that door pretty hard, and every animation show to some degree, some very minor, some large, have followed that pattern of like, oh, it just actually matters that those things happen to these characters, even if we're just doing this is a story where Craig of the Creek doesn't feel like wearing a hat in the winter cold. It's still informed by who that character has been up to this point.
Right. Yeah, and I think what was so interesting about this show is that as it went on, it started kind of peppering in serialized elements, not just like for character beats, but like things that could have shown up at the end of the season. We got Cybok, Pike's impending doom, the Gorn even were kind of teased of that, even though we did do something with them at the end of the season. But and then Una being an Illyrian. And so like all these were in this season, but none of them had to come to fruition in this season. And so when one of them finally does,
some of them didn't.
And some of them didn't. And when one of them finally does, which is Una getting arrested for being an Illyrian, you're surprised, because you're like, oh, I thought we were done. But we still get that one last like, oh, and by the way, remember Una's an Illyrian, and this is going to be important now.
Yeah.
I hope she's okay.
I hope we get more Captain Patel.
Me too. Where do we think? So Una does not have. We don't know what happened to her after in canon. So she could just be gone. She could get arrested.
Does the episode that she appeared in happen before this?
Yeah,
I see.
Many years.
Gotcha.
So like we don't know what could happen to her. What do we think is going to happen in the next season?
I have no idea.
Well, I highly suspect we will get some kind of follow-up on Cybok, even if it's minor.
I think so too.
I bet we see Angel again. I'll put it that way. I bet they bring Angel back for season 2.
I hope we see Angel again.
Yeah. Cookie, how'd you feel about Angel? You weren't here to talk about Angel.
I wasn't.
Really?
It was all right.
Oh, interesting.
Cookie doesn't like his Power Rangers villains in space.
No, I guess
don't.
not.
I was gonna go say it's Morbin time.
It's because they're non-binary. Is that it?
Oh, come on.
No.
Don't blame that on Cookie. Don't do that.
I'm sorry. I don't actually think that was it.
I know.
apologize.
I
It was
know
just a
you. You're
joke.
fine. It was okay. I don't know. It's okay.
I think now if I like had to pick an episode that I said was the weakest, it would probably be that one. Yeah, probably. But like, I still like that episode. So
The only episode that I can think of that made me not feel great, it was the one with the kid, episode 6.
oh yeah, but that's a different.
I know, but that's the only one. I can't say it's weak, but that would be the one that I would put on the bottom of a ranking because it's the one that kind of made me feel icky. But that's the point of the episode, so it's like it's a difficult relationship I have with it.
I think at the bottom ones, unfortunately, they're both like the semi Spock focused ones would be Spock Amok and the Angel episode. I think it's those two kind of battling for the bottom of the season for me.
Interesting, but there's nothing bad about them. It's just
no,
someone's got to go there.
No, it's just I mentioned before, like it's just when we talked about the episode with Angel, it's all the other stuff with Angel's crew is a little too goofy.
Sure.
I think it was very, very well. Like you knew it was going to happen. It was so well orchestrated that it's the same stuff that you've seen over and over again. It's like, yep, I know what's going to happen here.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think we all clocked that Angel was a bad guy from the moment they showed up on the street.
I don't know if you listened to our conversation, Cookie, but that was the main thing for me. Was I'm like, it makes Spock look stupid to a level that I have a hard time accepting, and so that's probably why I put that episode at the bottom, is because Spock looks borderline incompetent in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
And the Spock Amok episode is mostly just like, I just kind of don't care about his partner.
Spring?
I know it's an important story. It's nice to have her. I understand that like this is what Spock's doing at this point in his life, but I'm like, you could argue that it's some amount of me knowing it doesn't last, but I think it's far more that it's like I don't think I have an interest in Vulcan relationships since they're devoid of emotion. So they're not exactly thrilling to engage with.
Yeah, I can understand that. I like T'Pring though. I actually really like how they've.
I like the character. I liked her better when her and Spock were separated, and we were following her on her own thing through Spock's body, or I like the actor, and I like when she's doing an adventure on her own.
Yeah.
But the scenes that are just like the two of them in a room talking about, are we a thing? Shall we analyze? How do we engage in emotion? You tell me, Spock. How human are you? Like, I'm like, come on, I'm all right. Like, one scene of this was cool. 5 in a season is a little much.
I forgot to bring up, but in this last episode, we were vocally introduced to Scotty.
That's the person I was talking about in the beginning.
Yeah.
I hope that's not an indication that Scotty isn't joining the show.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I feel like that's more of just a cute, like, I think if they were planning on having him join the show, they would have cast someone. But they just turned it into a vocal thing because it's like, this could be like a cute nod because it's such a distinct voice. And so it makes you like, Scotty is on this ship at that point. But like, timeline things are different. We wanted to bring in like one more nod. It's not just Kirk that's around or Uhura that's still there. Like, we're not going to bring in Sulu. We're not going to bring in Bones, but we'll give you a little Scotty vocal cameo, like, cool, more crew stuff. But like, that's not happening. I don't think so.
I hope not. And I think, and I do have a concern that Hemmer's absence, the fact that we don't have an engineer, is the way that they're going to be like, okay, well, our engineer is going to be Scotty. I hope that's not the case, because I think that like who we have picked as far as legacy characters was perfect. We have a lot of them, but the ones that were picked were ones that needed the expansion, that needed the character development, that really needed to be explored, that didn't get it, but Scotty did. And I think
could Sulu show up on this show?
I'm
I don't
not
think so.
I'm not opposed to Sulu.
I just mean in canon terms, could he?
We don't know.
I think he could in canon, but he would be young. He would be really young.
Yeah, he wouldn't be. We couldn't be the helmsman of the Enterprise.
Yeah, he would be definitely an ensign, just doing their runs.
Because I'm always in favor of. I think George Takei is too, like in favor of more representation of that character.
Yeah.
I think in general it's important to have that character around. So I'm not opposed to a Sulu appearance in some fashion at some point.
I'm not either. And Sulu would be the one other one where I'm like, okay, but we're done. Because like I just don't think we need any more. We should just let these characters shine as they are on Strange New Worlds.
I think if I were to, me not invested in the future of Star Trek, I think if I were to put my 2 cents in, I just don't want any of them to become main cast members.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm like anti Scotty becoming like the engineer in the next season. But like, if you're going to have them show up in a single episode, like, oh, we happen to go to Starfleet and there's one of them, or we were negotiating with a ship on a mission, and here's how this and could lead to them being good crewmates later, that kind of thing, whatever. Whoever it is, like a one-off, I don't mind that.
No, I don't either. The engineer spot should be filled, and I hope it's with a new, interesting character, not with Scotty.
There's a show that does that well, and I cannot think of it. But like, there's a show that did like slowly give like an episode here or there of like important people that would come that you knew were important down the road, but like, God, and I cannot place it.
Oh, it does ring a bell, but did I watch this? Because it kind of sounds familiar.
To be honest with you, I'm wondering if it's Smallville.
Oh, I think you're right.
There's some level where I'm wondering if it's Smallville, where I just like, I know those characters are important in comics and they just like get their one episode appearance and it was like, man, that was real nice. And then they move on.
Yeah, because like Perry showed up in like a couple episodes.
Yeah.
Like, wasn't a main cast. I'm
not willing to say 100% that it's Smallville is the show I'm thinking of, but Smallville's not a terrible example of what I'm talking about.
No. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine if they want to go to like, oh, we're at Starbase 1 and Scotty's touring the Enterprise. Like, oh, it's a good ship. I can't wait to serve on this in 5 years. Sure. You want to do that? I'm good. I want the engineer spot to be filled with, honestly, would be really funny if they filled it with Bruce Horak again. If whatever character he's playing, he's also the engineer. But like, I would love to see a new character. I want them to create a new character specifically. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Do you know what dumb, stupid show I might be thinking of actually? Heroes. And what I mean is the parents, if you remember in Heroes, they are all, first off, they're iconic actors, but then they're also they're all part of like a group that knew each other, and like slowly over one of the seasons you meet each one individually when they were younger and how they ended up like in flashbacks connecting with them.
Oh, right.
And that was young George Takei, young Uhura, young Malcolm McDowell. And those were pretty good.
I forgot about that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I
anyway, there's room where something like that could be done. I think if you're willing to do it with a subtle hand, it's maybe not the worst idea.
All right. Well, we're going a little long now, so why don't we? There's nothing else.
Cookie loved the show. Cookie loves it. Right, Cookie?
Always loved it.
So, as at your first entry to Star Trek Sparkz, I almost called you Spock. What'd you think?
I really, really enjoyed it. I think this is, I've said it in other places, I think maybe on this show. I think this is, if people are correct, this is a good entry point for people who are not very versed in Star Trek. If you have the curiosity, I'd say this is the place to go. and I have a rough familiarity with the other shows. And I picked this one because it had the vibe that I was seeking. So I think that's the right way to go. You want to jump into Star Trek, you jump in here.
Oh,
you could go anywhere from here.
That's true.
You could go backwards. You could go forwards. Whatever you want to do. TBD. Like the desire is there, but there's an amount of like, how do I want to go about it? When do I want to go about it? Kind of thing.
A lot.
But I part of me is like, do I want to go back and watch Discovery to get up to this point with Pike? Just like seasons 1 and 2, because I know there's the time jump.
Cookie's like, don't do it. Don't do it. I would say, honestly, I think those first 2 seasons are solid. And
they really are.
Have a bad time.
Don't go past that, please. For the love of God, the love of space and science, do not go past.
You can't say that. You got Fake Nerds Watch shows about it. It's there.
Don't collect 200. You stop there, you go to jail. Don't go further.
I don't think season 4 is that bad. I don't think season 4 is that bad. I don't think season 3 is that bad. I don't think Discovery is as bad as people say it is. It is just an aggressively fine TV show.
It is. It is. Is it Star Trek? No.
Yes. It is Star Trek. Does it have the name Star Trek?
It's been a great time hanging out with you, sir.
Cookie. Do not gatekeep. Does it have the name Star Trek on it? Then it is Star Trek. Is it made by CBS? It is Star Trek.
I will say like Lower Decks is the other big show that appeals to me, right? Yeah. But like there's an amount of I still kind of want to be more familiar with Star Trek before I dive on that show, because I feel like that show has like part of the humor, not all of the humor, but part of the humor is knowing the world. And like I am vaguely more familiar with the world, but I don't know the world.
If you are familiar, there's a lot more sight gags that would work very well. But I think overall Lower Decks has a very strong storytelling, and you could conceivably do it if you wanted to go there.
Yeah.
So Cookie, who is keeping all of Star Trek now,
just parts,
just Discovery, part. Just keeping Discovery out of the gates.
That's it.
Where would you rank this in your Star Trek ranking? Let's keep it just the new shows, because like to rank it in all the shows would be ridiculous.
It is 100% without a shadow of a doubt number 1 for me.
Yeah.
Ooh, even beating Lower Decks then.
Even beating Lower Decks, because I think that this captivates the seriousness of Star Trek, whereas Lower Decks is very much lighthearted, humorous. Hey, I want to go and have dinner, but I want to go and have something in the background. I can do that. Versus this is like, you have to be focused and enjoy it and watch it from beginning to end and really soak it up, because there's so much going on with it that it's a beautiful show that really, for me, captivates Star Trek as a whole.
I'm curious. What's your favorite Star Trek show in general? Is it Deep Space Nine?
It's a toss-up. It just depends on the day. TNG or Deep Space Nine are my go-tos.
Okay. And you would put this up with them?
See, the only problem is those are like 20 episodes plus.
Oh no, I know. I'm aware, but like I would. So like I agree with you. This is top. This is I think the best of the new Star Trek shows. Lower Decks would be number 2. It's a close number 2, but it is number 2. And I think it's an incredible season of television. It's an incredible show that encapsulates everything I love about Star Trek. Everything I've been missing from Star Trek. You know, I talked about like the Orville. I was wondering if like I'm not connecting with the Orville this season as much because I have Strange New Worlds. Like it is, I finally have a Star Trek show that's scratching the itch I've been waiting for. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think that's the case anymore because now I'm further into the Orville. But like this is just, I believe, not just a perfect show, but a perfect Star Trek show. It's my favorite show of the year. And if Deep Space Nine wasn't so damn good, I would say it's my top Star Trek show, but it is below Deep Space Nine.
So you mean to tell me that this ranks better than Halo?
All right, goodbye, everyone. So that's it.
I think this show does a great job of capturing, like, I think a spirit of television that just doesn't exist in the current landscape.
Yeah,
I can agree.
Like whether it's streaming or network, I'm just not seeing a show doing what this show is doing.
Yeah, that's 100% correct.
It took what Orville kind of like opened the door for. We mentioned that before, but it ran very far with it. And it's so colorful. It can be both dark and sincere, but also goofy. I mean, they put vines all over the inside of the Enterprise for the creation of the book. So like it can do both things, and that's good Star Trek to me.
And you're absolutely correct. You're right. It harkens back to a classic Star Trek show, not just the original series, but Next Gen, when you would just have a bottle episode. But these aren't written because we need to fill a week quota. They're written because they are trying to tell a narrative story with an episodic format.
Right.
Yeah, I wish more shows would kind of take this. Specifically, I wish more Star Trek shows would take this and run. But like, I wish just more shows in general would just take what Strange New Worlds is doing well and expand on it and do their own thing with it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Why don't we call it there then?
Yeah.
All right. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Sparkz. This was great to get to finally talk about Star Trek with you.
Love it. Happy to do it.
Cookie, thank you for being here all this time. I brought up a bit in the past, but the whole point of doing these Fake Nerds watches was that there was going to be 3 of us in case one of us couldn't do it a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then that one person, things have happened in his life, good things that have taken him away. So I appreciate Cookie picking up the baton and being here this whole time.
Absolutely, my friend. I enjoy it.
So I believe we will do Lower Decks when that comes up. Star Trek Lower Decks will drop August 15th, and we'll have an episode shortly after. So stay tuned for when that's back. But we get a nice little break from Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
I missed it already. Until Star Trek.
I missed this show.
I missed the show.
There you go.
I missed the show greatly, but like I do miss just getting to sit down every Thursday to watch a Star Trek show. That was fun. Even if the shows varied wildly in quality. Anyway, so that'll do it, guys. So this was Strange New Worlds, Star Trek Strange New Worlds Fake Nerds Watch. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Thank you on this trek. I don't know why I didn't say trek. We really appreciate you guys watching this, and I really appreciate you guys for joining me. And you can check out other Fake Nerds watches. If you want to like this video and you want to subscribe to our channel, you can check out other Fake Nerds watch videos that we have here, such as Stranger Things. That's up now. The Boys. We finished The Boys. Miss Marvel's coming.
Yep.
That's that, right?
Yes. Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's there.
Obi-Wan Kenobi's there. We'll probably do an Umbrella Academy eventually.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe Resident Evil. We talked about doing Resident Evil in October, right?
We'll eventually have some kind of thing talking about the Resident Evil show, because especially with Ryan saying that he's pretty hot on it, I'm excited to do that. So
me too. So there's plenty more things to check out.
Like,
you guys.
Likely our next serialized Fake Nerds watch is probably She-Hulk.
What about Andor?
I think She-Hulk starts first.
Okay, well, Andor and She-Hulk probably around then, and then yeah. So we'll stay tuned. We announce everything on our social media. So yeah, there's all that. You can check out other things such as Basement Arcade and Basement Arcade Pause Menu, or video game shows. You can check out Animation Station and Fake Nerd Book Club. And you can check out our Mothership show. However, you can't check out our Mothership show this weekend because we are not doing an episode. We are not doing an episode this weekend, even though there's so much news.
Is there?
There quite a lot of trailers.
I wonder what's happening.
Yeah. Do we need to talk about all of them?
I mean, I want to, but I'll miss the episode I'll miss the episode that you guys will talk about them. That's kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. So instead, guys, this is coming out before, right, Sparkz?
If YouTube will let me.
Hey, if it came out before Sunday, July 17th, we are doing Mike's Impossible movie trivia challenge. Mike Matola, our good friend and collaborator, Mike Matola, is returning to the podcast to do Mike's Impossible movie trivia challenge. We've done this a few times now, 4 or 5 times, I think 5 times. And we're going to do How to Train Your Dragon. That's his newest print that he's writing out as we speak. He's ferociously writing it out to get it done by Sunday. That I'm actually not lying. So that will be the episode. In the episode place will be that show. You can join us. I believe we're doing it live, so you guys can join and play along. Maybe you'll win a thing. We'll see what he says. All right. You can find us on Patreon, and we can find us on TeePublic. Oh, and if this episode comes out after July 17th, go check that out. And you can check out our Patreon and our TeePublic if you want to support us financially. Those are linked below, as well as on our website, fakenerdpodcast.com. You can check out everything we do. All the links are on that website, which is linked below. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Fake Nerd Podcast. fakenerdguys@gmail.com. I'm at BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter. I also write for Screen Rant, where I just put up a bunch of articles about Thor: Love and Thunder, if you're interested. Atomic Geekdom, where I have a new article coming out soon, unless you're watching this on a different day, in which case it's already out. And I edit and write for kaijuramenmedia.com. Cookie, plug your stuff. I forgot to tell you to plug your stuff before I did all this. I'm so sorry.
It's all good, my friend. It's all good. On social media, on Instagram, Just Little Podcast. On Twitter, at Just Podcasting. Currently on Instagram, I have a giveaway because I have reached 400 subscribers on YouTube. So
congratulations.
It is a huge feat. Thank you. And I am partnered up with a wonderful guy in the comic book community. He's under 4 Color Creations on Instagram. Check him out. He actually does wooden carvings, and I actually have one to display. So he has one that he's actually doing right now.
That's very cool.
It is so awesome. And it's really, really detailed. On the back of the one that he's given away for my 400, it actually has my logo on the back, which is really awesome. So highly recommend checking him out. Podcast, Just Little Podcast, everywhere you listen to podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, the whole 9 yards. Drop a new episode every Tuesday.
What's your next episode about?
It's going to be on SuperCon. So I went to a Comic-Con a couple weekends ago, and I wanted to go and talk about that because I was able to go and get a press pass to go there. So wanted to kind of shout them out and actually really talk into detail as far as my experiences there. This is my 3rd time going to SuperCon, and it didn't disappoint. It was really great.
Very
so
cool.
Be on the lookout for that.
Sparkz, where can people find you?
You can find me pouring one out for Lieutenant Dale at Sparkz Witty on Instagram and Twitter, SPARKZ Witty.
Oh, Dale. Okay, guys, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and until next time, see us. Live long,
and prosper.